We're in the home of Tony Abbate, Florida Atlantic University Associate Professor.
Well, I'm an architect, and as an architect, sustainability has always been an issue. Even back in the 70s when I went to school, the whole idea of designing passively to reduce energy has always been something that I've really tried to promote, both in my practice and in my teaching. Architecture, up until the late 50s and early 60s, really served a purpose beyond just what most people would consider an aesthetic. Architecture actually functioned to make the environment comfortable for people depending on the climate zone that they live in. So for example, here in South Florida, that means designing your buildings so that you can live comfortably in them in a hot, humid climate. If we were in Ohio or New York, we would be designing our buildings so that we could live comfortably in winter, summer, spring, and fall. There are a lot of architectural techniques that, again, you look to history to design passively. But also, in my practice, we are working together with the university and local county planning agencies, as well as the Florida Department of Transportation, to develop countywide and regional plans for reducing carbon emissions. And a lot of this has to do with shifting our mode of transportation away from the car or the single occupancy vehicle and more toward mass transit. Along with that comes the idea that if we're going to shift and create new forms of transportation and allow people to walk, or actually make the environment more comfortable for people to walk or ride their bike or use these alternatives, that would mean literally redesigning the built environment. And so we're working on plans with these various agencies. It's very multidisciplinary, it's very interesting work, but I think what we're doing is laying the groundwork for a sustainable future here in South Florida.
What makes this house sustainable?
The house was designed with sustainability in mind. It was built 13 years ago. The first aspect of sustainability is the location of the house. So it's situated near the downtown, near where we shop, near where we work. And the idea is that the location of the house, the property that we purchased, was in town so that we could walk to as many places as we could without having to drive. That was one aspect of sustainability, is location and reducing carbon emissions by walking instead of driving. The second aspect is the house isn't very big. It's a townhouse, it's an urban townhouse. It only has 2,400 square feet. It's 15 feet wide to fit on the narrow lot that we have downtown. And I tried to design it using the techniques that we've developed here in South Florida for building over most of the 20th century, at least the early part of the 20th century, which was before air conditioning. So learning a little bit of history taught me some things with regard to the way the walls were constructed, using stucco and masonry and an airspace between the masonry and the interior wallboard. We're using radiant barrier insulation, and we have concrete floors and concrete roofs. And that has to do with another aspect of sustainability, which is hurricane resistance, which is important here in South Florida. Apart from that, we use low VOC paints exclusively, which are volatile organic compounds. If you try to omit those in your paint, you're better off. We also used compact fluorescent lighting throughout the house. We have dual flush toilets. That means that you have it uses less water per flush. And apart from that, we also have a rainwater collection system. All the rainwater that falls on the property stays on the property, drains on the property, and recharges our aquifer and feeds our irrigation well. Our plants, all the landscaping is xerophytic, meaning we don't have to water it artificially, and we really don't have to maintain it very much. It kind of takes care of itself.
And how have you incorporated sustainability into your teaching?
Into my teaching, our students are exposed to materials. We actually have them investigate buildings that were built pre-air conditioning, pre-mechanical systems, to really look at how these buildings were built, what the materials were, and why they went together in a certain way to deal with climate issues. And in that way, by analyzing the past and deconstructing it, if you will, they're able to sort of formulate the main ideas that then they can transfer into new materials and new technologies as they move forward. There's also an ethical dimension to this, and in our teaching, and the faculty that I work with share this. We try to imbue our students with a sense of ethic that goes beyond just simply making life better for human beings, and we need to extend that to simply making life better for the entire planet. So really it becomes an ethical attitude that we try to carry through in the courseware.
So Tony, why are we doing all this? Is it too late for us to really make a difference?
Well, I guess one can say that it's too late, but then, you know, how do you know that? How do you know that it's too late or too early? We consume a lot, and we don't really think about it. We just do it because it seems like everybody else is doing it. So you can continue to live that way and suffer the consequences because, quite frankly, the resources are rapidly being depleted and they're costing more and more money. Not just in terms of extraction costs, but in terms of the political side and social side to it. We're fighting 2 wars right now. There's a lot of tension on our borders, and a lot of this has to do with the imbalance that exists. So we can continue to live in a vacuum and pretend everything's great and consume gas and energy like there's no tomorrow, but I really think that that's an irresponsible stance. I really believe that it's unethical, and it would be extremely unethical to teach our children that that would be an appropriate lifestyle. So I guess you could decide not to do it, but actually what makes me happy is doing it. So I guess it boils down to what makes you happy.
Welcome back to ProCon, everybody. Todd V.
Dave Kettlewell.
Well, Dave, I think that was first of all, I loved that architect's home. And it felt good. I mean, it was a warm, warm day when we were there, and it felt very comfortable. The way he had built that structure, very sound, very efficient. I'd like to live in that home, but he wouldn't leave.
I agree. It was an exceptional facility. But here we are at ProCon.
Yeah.
And what do you have to say on the pro side?
First of all, I love that he took indigenous plants that don't require any extra water, and yet his garden looked lush, looked beautiful. So that's one way that he cut down. I also liked the efficiency of the window structure so that he could have cross breezes throughout that house, front to back. Was a great design. Of course, it helps being your own architect.
You know, I have to say this, and I probably shouldn't. But since everybody knows that small cars with small engines get triple the gas mileage or double the gas mileage of an SUV, why is it that so many people, not just in America but worldwide, buy those SUVs and drive them? It's because...
It's psychological. They're trying to say something about who they want to be.
Okay. But my point is, there's a situation where people know something could be better for the environment but don't do it. And I'm wondering how the conflict will develop over time between that which we believe is more sustainable and green versus what people want. And it'll be very interesting to see how those two kind of balance out over time. My guess is that a certain percentage of the population is going to go forward with a lot of sustainable ideas, but a lot of them aren't. And maybe that's okay.
I think it depends really on what happens with our fossil fuel prices. We saw a lot of people who were diehard SUV owners dumping those when gas prices got to $4 a gallon. I think if we see that happen in home heating and home water and all those other things we use as utilities, as those goes up, all of a sudden these green ideas start real smart.
Of course, everybody's buying the SUVs again now, too.
This is Barry Benjamin. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Sustainable Life.